two grow facilities swap HPS for LEDs. Same facility size, same yield target. One does the math, one doesn't. Their electrical bills end up 30% different. Walk us through a little bit about what the considerations are and why we see that happen.
A lot of customers either don't know how to do the math or they haven't thought about it. They read the cut sheets or the marketing explanations on a lot of LEDs and they're like, okay, this is the right choice, and it is. But then they don't go through the photometric plans probably the way they should and consider things like the inverse square law, the mounting heights, the actual power output of the lights, and the spacing that they're going to put them on. And I think that's a really good starting point for anyone that's considering it as well. Take the total amount of lights in an area is generally one of the easiest ways to do it. Say it's a 50 light room and it's roughly 1,200 square feet that those lights space and cover over top of the benching, and divide that and see, okay, well, I have X amount of 50 lights at 1,000 watts divided by the 12 or 1,400 square feet. And now I know X amount of watts per square foot. Traditional double-ended HPS are typically between 21 and 25 square feet of fixture is just the standard to get about 900 to 1,000 PPFD from a cultivation standard. And you're looking at a 45 to 50 watts a square foot when you divide the 1,000 by the 25 or the 1,000 by 21. And so your initial starting point is anyone trying to save on your COGS and the cost of your goods or sustainability and electrical efficiency is, well, then I need to somehow get below that 45 or 50 watts a square foot. And that's where I think a lot of people come up short in doing that math or understanding it to start with. And it's hard. I think in high bay situations, there's tons of choices where you have single tier benching. Generally, the mounting heights for a fixture can easily be between 3 feet, even up to 5 or 6 feet, very, very often, because there's 12 to 16 foot ceiling heights. And then you do get into multi-tier systems, and they're more and more common. And the one thing that's important about this conversation is you're limited in that situation to your fixture choice and the spacing just by the mounting height of the racks and the width and length of those rows as well. So being more conscious of that, I think you run into roadblocks there. But still, I mean, by and large, I think the majority of facilities we're in that are also the most ergonomic are single tier facilities. And then they also have the most to gain with lowering their costs and maximizing lighting efficiency.
At the base here, the important thing is total up the number of lights you have, take the number of watts for each light, multiply it out to get your total wattage, and then take your canopy square footage, divide those to get your watts per square foot, and use that as your guiding point for starting when you're thinking about what the next step would be if you're considering or walking through the math for upgrading the lighting in your facility. And then from there, you can start factoring things in, like what's the additional CapEx here? What's the change in OpEx going to be? And then how is that going to potentially affect the yield and profitability across the facility?
Yes, even when you and I are talking about this subject often, you brought up PPFD. And I think that's one of the next important factors to getting your CapEx expenditure and the budget really dialed in is, okay, I know my starting point, and this is what I'm spending my money on today, and the amount of watts per square foot I have. And more qualified growers can probably get to this very quickly. And then us as front row, it's a resource that we can provide as well. Is okay, what is a generally good PPFD for the vast majority of varieties and the performance I expect? And then the other thing people I don't think talk about often enough with that number is what's a good uniformity for the area those lights actually cover. Most lighting companies, which is great, they're going to sell you enough lights where the uniformity is in the high 90% range, 99% uniformity. But you have a lot of over lighting and overlit areas and over spacing. And then it's a lot of situations you walk into a cultivation area and you see them dimming the lights. And you're like, well, it was mapped out to give me a 99.9% uniformity and X amount of distance and X amount of PPFD. But when I actually do that, it's too much and I have to turn it all down. And it's like, well, you paid for all of that wattage and all of those fixtures and you weren't going to use them at 100% capacity. And so I think deciding, well, do I want this canopy to be lit at 92% efficiency at 950 PPFD, which would be incredibly killer, but there's a tremendous savings there versus going to 1,000 PPFD and 97% uniformity. Depending on your facility, that could be millions of dollars or easily tens of thousands of dollars. And probably makes almost no performance difference, but now you've saved a tremendous amount on electricity and outlay of money as well.
Yeah, how many times has this mistake been made in in recent history? And what's also crazy is you see facilities just going through their lighting every few years almost. It's like this idea that an upgrade has to happen every couple of years, otherwise you're missing out. And to some extent, that might be true if the technology has really improved in efficiency. And one of the things that I think has been a really big change over the last several years in cultivation is looking at the PPE, the photon efficiency per watt of lighting and how it's changed. And I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I believe with like a standard dual end HPS, the photon efficiency was something like 2.0. You get like, 2 ppf per watt basically.
Yep.
So you'd have 1,000-watt light and it's putting out around 2,000 micromoles. And with a lot of the modern LEDs now, you see that pushing up in the 2.7 to 3.0 range. So you see, something like a 30 to 50% increase in the amount of photons produced per watt of electricity going in, which makes these things like pretty powerful upgrade for a lot of people. And of course, there's all of these trade-offs, like certain wavelengths, you get more photons per watt of energy going in. And then on the plant side, certain wavelengths produce more photosynthesis per photon going into the plant. So there's a lot of things to trade off here, and you can't just maximize the photon efficiency off the charts or just maximize how much photons you're getting per watt. There's a balance of both those things. And I think what we've seen is the initial LED fixtures did a pretty bad job of getting this balance. They were either, well, we had like the kind of dual spectrum ones that never worked out super well, and then ones that were just pure bright white, which worked better in a lot of ways, but were much less efficient than they could be. And now what we see is fixtures that are tuned with very specific spectral distributions and different percentages of diodes at different wavelengths.
Yes.
And really the performance there seems to continuing to be increasing a little bit.
It is totally, and I can't agree with you more on the efficiency of them. And I think when you're looking at cut sheets, this is all the more reason that you want to really maximize getting the most out of your fixture and installing it the right way, both on a length and width and a mounting height. Because when you're talking about, a 20, 30, even 50% difference in the efficiency of it, you want to capture that and get all of that benefit out of it. I think a huge factor too that you brought up is the dynamic and the change over time of LEDs, and specifically diode strength. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you're talking about fractional to single watt diodes. And now you're into even some diodes being in the teens or several single digit strength and wattage of the individual diodes. And for me, I think something that's been negated in the designing of a facility is the discharge intensity. And then the relationship to the inverse square wall when you're really looking at cultivation under the sun and outdoor, really nice greenhouses that are geographically located in a good area, and then comparing that downward to an indoor grow. But it really relates to the volume and your yield, and then using a fixture properly is what I'm getting at. Single tier is the best example. When you have roll top benching or even palletized benching in an indoor grow, and you have a good mounting height, there's 3, 4, 5 companies now that are making 1,500 watt lighting fixtures with very high strength diodes and large discharge intensity. And if I was a cultivator on single tier and I was trying to maximize both my volume of yield and then lowering my COGS, because labor and electricity are going to be 1 and 2 or 2 and 1 on your cost of your goods, is then I would be trying to get a fixture that gets me around the 30 or sub 30 watt per square foot. And it sounds insane, but you can mount some of these 1,500 watt fixtures at 4 to 5 feet above the canopy on 49 to 56 square foot spacings. And immediately you do that math and you are in the 30 or sub 30 watt per square foot range, depending on the spacing of that fixture, while getting 95+% uniformity at 1,000 PPFD. And so you're talking about data points and statistics you can't argue with in terms of just keeping your costs low and designing a facility the right way. And then I think now you've positioned yourself to really capture the most out of other inputs, such as, say under canopy lighting. I don't think out of the hundreds of grows that we've walked into, a single person yet has not told us they've got a yield or a benefit from installing them. But wouldn't you want to maximize both the above lighting and the under lighting and really dial in both your yield and performance increase while reducing your costs?
Yeah. And I think this is something that we will get to maybe talk about in a future session here. But looking at how to do this really intelligently with under canopy lighting, because there is direct research on this. If you come in with a certain amount of top lighting, and then you take that top lighting budget and redistribute it with some on the top, some coming from under canopy, staying at your same total wattage, what happens? Does that improve yield and quality? There's actually direct literature that's been published on this that probably most people don't know about because it's only come out in the last year or two. And then I have a bunch of my own like in-house data from our facilities where we've done this. So I think in a future session, we'll have something lined up to talk about that.
Yeah, and that is very exciting because yes, distribution of the lighting upward and downward throughout the volume of the canopy is tremendously important. And whether that's taking it from the side or underneath or understanding how to utilize the lighting from above as well, all of those holistically need to be used together.
Yeah, I think that's right. So let's try to finish off with a couple of practical takeaways here for somebody who's thinking about a lighting upgrade or revamping some of their lighting. Sounds like one of them is actually do the math to understand how much lighting that you're currently running, what the current wattage is, and what PPFD that's delivering. And if you can, try to find the spec sheets for your lights so you can see their efficiency, their micromoles per joule, the PPE. And then if you're going to do that upgrade, look and see if you can upgrade that efficiency pretty significantly while keeping a favorable spectral distribution. Then if that's the case, then you have the option of reducing your total wattage going into the room pretty significantly, or at the very least, reducing your top lighting wattage, redistributing some of that wattage to under canopy lights. So I think there's a couple of key things that it's important for people to do, which is like doing the basic math, looking at the spec sheets, and then thinking clearly about how you want to distribute that wattage within your room, within the budget that you have.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the only other thing is using your resources. Front row being an example in this conversation in itself is this is not easy. And it's, it sounds easy to people that do it all day, every day, but there's great resources out there where when you're looking at photometric plans and cut sheets where people can help you with this as well.
Yeah.